On their wedding night, just hours after the last guest had left, Ada walked into their room in her white silk nightgown. She found Mama Veronica seated at the foot of their bed. Mama Veronica looked her up and down, smiled calmly, and said, "I just want to see how you handle my son." Ada laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. Ada met David at a business conference in Abuja. He was polished, patient, and everything she'd prayed for in a husband. Tall, soft-spoken, and always respectful, he opened doors, pulled out chairs, and listened when she spoke. It wasn't long before Ada fell hard. He told her about his late father and how he'd been raised solely by his mother, Mama Veronica, a strong woman who had sacrificed everything for him. Ada admired the story. She hadn't met Mama Veronica yet, but David's devotion to her warmed her heart. When he proposed, her family rejoiced. Ada thought she'd hit the jackpot. But at their wedding, Mama Veronica barely smiled. She didn't hug Ada. Instead, she pulled her son aside and whispered, "You'll always be my baby. No woman will change that." After the last wedding guest left, the house finally grew quiet. The music had faded, the laughter had stopped, and the air was thick with the scent of sweat, perfume, jollof rice. She took a long, hot shower, hoping to wash off the day's exhaustion. Her white silk gown clung softly to her damp skin as she stepped into the dim bedroom. Then she froze. Mama Veronica was sitting at the edge of their bed. Not in the living room. Not in her own quarters. No. Right there. On their bed. Her hands were folded on her lap. Her feet didn't touch the ground. And her eyes, calm, still, and far too alert, stared directly at Ada. "I just want to see how you handle him," she said in a low, steady voice, like a teacher observing a slow student. Ada forced a laugh, wrapping her arms around herself. "Mama, I thought you'd gone to bed." No reply. Just that same stillness. Then David walked in, already loosening his tie. He didn't stop in his tracks. Didn't even blink. "Mama, I thought you were going to your room," he said casually, as though this was normal. As though it was okay for a grown man's mother to be sitting on the marital bed he was supposed to share with his new wife. "I will," she said. She stood, walked over to him, and kissed his forehead with unsettling tenderness. Then she leaned close and whispered something into his ear. Ada couldn't hear it. He nodded. Just once. Then Mama Veronica turned to Ada, gave a small, unreadable smile, and walked out without saying another word. The door clicked shut. David didn't say much as he pulled off his shirt and lay down. He barely looked at Ada. She sat beside him, confused, waiting. When she touched his arm gently, he sighed. "I'm tired," he said. Just that. No kiss. No warmth. He turned his back and fell asleep almost instantly, as if her presence beside him was just furniture. Ada lay back on her pillow, wide awake. The silk gown that once made her feel like a bride now felt like a costume. Something was off. She glanced at the door. It was shut, but it didn't feel shut. She pulled the duvet up to her chin. Her heart beat loudly in the silence. The second night of Ada's marriage began much like the first, quiet, uneasy, and unnervingly cold. Ada had spent the evening pretending. Pretending to be comfortable. Pretending not to notice the glances Mama Veronica kept throwing her way across the living room. By 10 p.m., David yawned and stretched, announcing it was time to rest. Ada followed him into the bedroom, secretly hoping they'd finally have a moment to themselves, just the two of them, as husband and wife. She had barely begun to undress when there was a single knock at the door. Before either of them could respond, the door creaked open. Mama Veronica stepped in like she lived there. Like the room belonged to her. Like David still belonged to her. She didn't ask to come in. She didn't wait for an invitation. She walked in with the quiet confidence of a queen inspecting her throne. Then, she sat down at the edge of their bed. But this time, she spoke. He likes his back rubbed before anything else, she said calmly, as if sharing a recipe. I always used to do it when he was little. Ada blinked. Her throat tightened. She wasn't sure what to say. Mama, Ada said slowly, I'm his wife. Her voice was soft, but the weight behind it was still. Mama Veronica turned her head slightly. Exactly. Then she gave a slow smile. Which is why I expect you to do it the way he likes it. Like I taught him. Ada stood frozen, gown clutched at her chest. She looked at David, hoping, praying he would say something. That he would speak up. That he would defend her. But David just stood there, looking down at the floor like a guilty teenager. He scratched the back of his neck and gave a half shrug. I mean, it does help me relax, he muttered. Ada's chest tightened. Relax. Was she here to be a wife, or a replacement mother? I'm not here to continue your mother's bedtime routine, she whispered under her breath. But Mama Veronica heard. She stood up slowly. Her movement was deliberate, her chin high. She walked past Ada and paused at the door. Then, without turning back, she said, Don't make him uncomfortable in his own house. A good wife listens. She walked out. David climbed into bed without another word. He turned his back to Ada like he had the night before and sighed. No conversation. No affection. No explanation. Ada sat on the edge of the bed, trembling. She got up quietly and walked into the bathroom, locking the door behind her. Inside, she turned on the tap just to drown the silence. She didn't want to cry, but the tears came anyway. Fat, hot tears rolled down her cheeks as she sat on the closed toilet seat, arms wrapped around herself. This wasn't marriage. This was a performance. And she was the only one who didn't know her role. She stayed there for almost an hour. And in that moment, she realized something terrifying. She had entered a marriage where she might never be alone with her husband. One night, Ada had trouble sleeping and woke up at 2:43 a.m. She turned and screamed. In the corner of the room, Mama Veronica was seated in the dark, watching them sleep. Jesus!